Good morning, everybody. This is Paul Heaney here from the People's Forum. This is episode 3 of New World Visions. And today I'd like to welcome Dr. Tess Lawrie, who's with us. And we've also got Daniel Bell. Daniel will be talking about his Gardens of Hope, I think. And Tess will be talking about a conference that's coming up in Bath, if I've got it right, between the 20th and 23rd of May. Is that right, Tess?
Yes, 20th and 22nd.
22nd, right, okay. So is it actually for a 3-day conference? Or?
Yes.
Yeah, it is, right. So first of all, I'd like to say how impressed I am by you, obviously. In fact, anyone on this series is, why are they here? Because they're inspiring people. This is all part of looking to see what we can do positively to create the world in which we wish to see. And I recently saw Tess at a conference. What I was impressed with, I made some notes here. She talks about to have everybody step out of fear and focus on science and wisdom. Because what Tess is about, as far as I'm aware, is evidence-based science. And of course, we know there's been a lot of suspicious evidence around these days, but let's look at the positive side to see what real evidence science is based on and what Tess has in mind for how we can improve science and how that is perceived by maybe the public as well. So Tess, can I ask you first of all to get an idea about, because a lot of people, some people will not know who you are. Background and experience would be interesting to find out from you now. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks very much. It's really great to be speaking with you today, and Daniel, and I feel really honored to have this opportunity. My background is as a medical doctor, mainly in obstetrics, which is pregnancy and childbirth. For the last 10, 12 years, I've been mainly involved in research and evidence synthesis, evidence synthesis is the process of evaluating bodies of evidence to decide whether certain treatments or interventions should be recommended or not. Okay. So I have a desk job really for the last decade or so, and I have a company called the Evidence-Based Medicine Consultancy. This company, through this company, we only work for non-profit organizations, and a lot of my work has come in the past 10 years from the World Health Organization.
Right.
Since 2012. So I also do a lot of work for Cochrane Collaboration, which is also, it's a database of systematic reviews, which are these documents that evaluate the best evidence to make clinical practice recommendations. So when COVID broke out, I was concerned with the recommendations that were coming forth. It felt like many were not based on evidence. And so it led to, I won't go into the detail of it, but it led to the establishment of a new organization called the World Council for Health. And this organization was formed in September 2021. And now, is it 8 months later? We have 150 different partners across 50 countries. So it's really just gone from strength to strength, and it's a totally, it's a community interest company. It's that's not for profit. Many of the people involved are volunteers and international expert volunteers from around the world, scientists, doctors, lawyers, other members of civil society. So it's really an amazing organization, and I hope people will go to the website and have a look. So can I show a few slides and just give you a very brief outline on the World Council for Health, and then I'd like to tell everyone about the Better Way Conference, which is the World Council for Health's first international conference.
Absolutely.
I just want to stress, that the World Council of Health is very much about it has the vision of a better way. So it's a better way for a better world. And we want to motivate and inspire people to see the silver lining in the COVID crisis, because there certainly is a silver lining. It's an opportunity for great change.
And that's why I like your great positivity. So let's look at this silver lining.
Okay. So let's just go, there we go. So yeah, so the World Council for Health logo, I'll just go into it. It's a big pink apple, a wholesome apple, representing preventive health. And, an apple a day, you know that adage, an apple a day keeps the doctor away. I'm not saying that an apple a day does keep the doctor away and is the only thing you need to do for health, but certainly it represents that wholesomeness and preventive health, preventive approach to health. It also looks like lungs, and that reminds us of the importance of breathing, and also that an in-breath and an out-breath sustain us without us even thinking about it, and they're opposites. And so it's a reminder that opposites work in harmony together, and we mustn't be afraid of our different perspectives. We need opposites in order to function and to be our best. Also, the hand is there to remind us that we take responsibility. We stand up and we take responsibility for our health and for our world. And we do that through love and community, through working together, and that's the heart. So I'll just continue. So what the vision of the World Council for Health is we believe in a healthy world where everyone enjoys information transparency, access to medicines, and support to optimize our health while respecting individual health choices without fear of discrimination or persecution. We believe in a world where we keep our water and air clean, our food uncontaminated, and our families together. We have a lot of committees, from health and humanity, which is science and medical. We have legal, we have a bioethics committee, law and activism, media, youth committee, and I won't go into those anymore. We provide essential resources like how to treat COVID at home, early treatment guide. We have a spike detox guide. We have amazing resources for how to communicate with people and reestablish connection, because so many people have just found their relationships really floundering in the last 2 years with all the divisive messaging that's been coming forth in our media and from the governments. So another very important role that we have is to safeguard human rights, and we have a number of initiatives on this. Whilst doing that, we have, the main focus is to promote health. And so we're really trying to get people to take responsibility for their health and to remember what's good for them, for people our age to remember what's good for us, because I think we kind of get complacent in numbers. So we have loads of people who we all know what's good for us, but we think, well, everybody drinks too much and everybody eats too much and everybody does this and that and is on their phones, and so what does it matter if I do it too? But I think especially important for young people, because many young people actually don't know what's good for them and they've never been taught it. So it's know what's good for you, or learn what's good for you, or remember what's good for you. And we have a number of campaigns, or they have a campaign called Don't Be Like Sparky, know what's good for you.
A lot of people don't know who Sparky was or is. I think Sparky came out, was it the 1930s?
No, in actual fact, Sparky, well, obviously everyone's got their own Sparky, but Sparky is it's a personal story, a true story. When I shall tell it to you if you like.
Yeah, please.
When my son was 5, we got him 2 guinea pigs, but the one guinea pig was called Sparky. And Sparky didn't know, he lived in a cage in the garden and had this idyllic life for a couple of weeks, and was eating everything that was good for him, that was given to him, and there was lovely grass and everything, but he kept trying to get this plant through the wire of the cage. And so the one day I chucked this sprig of, it's called plectranthus, it's a beautiful little succulent plant, flower. I put him a sprig in his cage, and I thought, there you go, Sparky, eat as much as you like. And the next morning he was dead, and he'd eaten the whole thing, and obviously he didn't know what was good for him. And I was really upset, and so was my son, because I was a doctor and a mother, and I'd killed my son's guinea pig. But he, it just made me realize that he'd got so removed from his intuition, that he no longer knew what was good for him. And so, you know, even before COVID, I was just so aware that we do so many things that are bad for us. We're so removed from our intuition. You know, we don't eat the things that are good for us. We don't do the activities that are good for us. And we seem to have really forgotten what's good for us. So that's where Don't Be Like Sparky, Know What's Good for You comes from. And we had a competition. We put a little competition out to ask for animation entries. And we've got this cute little video that goes with the campaign about Sparky. And obviously Stitch was, he didn't eat the plectranthus, and he was very happy.
What a touching story, but very cute idea. And it's great. And I think you got some sort of generic character, or the cartoonist prejudice of generic character. So it looks something between an animal and could be a human. But that's, I guess, to get that across, the message across that, yeah, humans and animals
it's really
looking to, they need to use their intuition, all of them.
Yeah, it's really, we really need to engage with, because we all know what's good for us. I mean, you know, if I sit in front of the TV for 2 hours, you know, and I don't move, I know that hasn't been the best use of my time.
You can feel that lethargy.
Yeah. But anyway, if you want to see that little animation, I can show you at the end if there's time.
That'd be great.
I do have it there.
Well, what a great inspiration as well. I mean, that's going to obviously inspire and actually sort of not capture the imagination, but capture the interest of maybe younger people.
Yes, exactly, because we really, it's hard to reach young people at the moment.
Especially the science. Yeah.
Yes, especially because they've grown up with the social media and their phones, and so they choose all the time what they are going to watch, or they think they choose anyway. They get, you know, obviously they get fed stuff that big tech thinks they should watch. But the point is that there isn't, you know, we're not all exposed to the same messages, and it's really difficult to get health messages to them. Because
and what I also like in your list here is the fact that it looks to me very holistic. I mean, co-sponsor is Arc Foundation, my other platform. I have 12 universal principles, I call them. But I talked to Satish Kumar, who I said, can you just check those principles? And this is the guy who walked 8,000 miles from Delhi, Gandhi's grave in Delhi, to JFK's grave in New York, in Washington, D.C. And he said, yeah, it's perfect. But what he talks about is, of course, the soil, soul, and society. And you've got soil and soil health, which is a very, very important thing, because it's been degraded so much. And of course, it's the basis to what our food is, and whatever you put in, that's pretty much how you're going to be ending up. And of course, Daniel will be no doubt talking about that as well. But yeah, so you're one of the few doctors I've come across who've got such a great holistic vision of and knowledge of what actually affects us and what we should be doing.
Well, I think it's so clear now that, you know, the route we've been going down is really the route of, you know, that we've been manipulated into going down. You know, it's the corporate route. It's we're consumers, and we're a market basically to be sold things, and so we've kind of been misled in the obvious, and really in the true sense of the word. We've been led in the wrong direction, and we've actually forgotten all of these things that keep us healthy. And in actual fact, most of them don't cost anything at all.
Absolutely agree. I mean, it's the Pied Piper effect, isn't it? We've been led it down with a certain tune, down the garden path, as it were.
Yeah, keeping healthy shouldn't cost you anything.
No, right.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to I think the next slide, just to say, we also about ensuring accountability. So, you know, in the nicest possible way, we will tell the organizations that they are not doing a good job if they are not doing a good job. Right. So onto the conference. We've got this amazing conference happening in Bath on the 20th, next week, 20th to 22nd. It's in person and virtual. And it's the first time where we are actually publicly asking questions. So we've got 7 amazing questions that we are tasking our panels to answer. It's very solutions focused. So it's not about who did what to who and why, and what happened in the past. It's not about rehashing and examining it all in great detail. It's about saying, this is where we are. So how do we move forward in a positive way and create a better world? And so we have 3 days to answer these important questions. And the slogan of the conference, and indeed of the World Council for Health, is a better way for a better world. So we've got these most amazing people coming from around the world for the conference. We've got Del Bigtree, who's the Master of Ceremonies for the entire 3 days. He also participates in a panel on media and how we restore media credibility. So I hope people will come really to see him and hear what he has to say on all these different matters.
Can I just ask you, Tess, is
yes.
Del actually based in the States usually? It's from the States, isn't it?
Yes, yes. So Del has his own, he has his own podcast called The High Wire, which is very, very popular in the States and actually worldwide. So
is he doing he's not doing a world tour here? Is it just one-off conference?
Yes, it's just a one-off. He's coming especially for the conference.
Yeah.
And he might do, I'm not sure, but he might do one of his podcasts from here. I think they were considering that, so him and his team, so we will see. There's also many other people who have their own podcasts and shows who are hosting. We've got Majid Nawaz. We have, so Majid and Shabnam Palesi Mohammed is a World Council for Health representative. She's on the steering committee. We have a number of steering committee members who are co-hosting alongside non-World Council for Health hosts. So I'll just mention Majid Nawaz. He's hosting our panel on asking the question is, how do we reclaim science? That's the first panel. And then we have Dan Aston Gregory and Dr. Jennifer Hibbert, who's from Canada. She's with World Council for Health. But Dan is our local hero here in Bath, Bristol. He's had a podcast called Pandemic Podcast for since the start of the pandemic, and now he has a platform called the Elevate Network. He's really an amazing local hero. Laura Anderson and Neil Oliver, obviously, I'm sure many people know Neil Oliver already. He's with GB News, and Laura is she's with the Guernsey Conversations. She started this style of conversation that we're having ×7 in Guernsey last year, and she's been an amazing resource and help in setting up the conference. Brett Weinstein, I'm sure many people know, he has a podcast in the States called the Dark Horse Podcast, very, very popular, and he's a professor of biology and an amazing thinker. And he's hosting the panel on how do we restore media credibility and journalistic independence. So, and I just want to say,
well, you know that because you probably would have met, or you did here certainly. I think you met Carey Murray.
Yes.
United Free Press. In fact, we were talking last night to him about getting Brighter Times at least affiliated with the UFP.
Yes, Carey is coming to the conference.
Yeah, I thought he might be. Great. It's just what we need.
Yeah, there is so many media coming to the conference. It's really going to be wonderful, and hopefully the reach of this kind of good news, a new vision, and a better way where we can all work together is going to.
Yeah, he's going to be doing a presentation for us as well, because we need to look at the whole gamut as pretty much what you're talking about here. So he's going to be talking about the media and how, as I suggested to him, he's actually rebuilding the fourth estate, which is is the media, which is meant to be one of those pillars that check the checks and balances, which has largely disappeared. So that's great that he's going to be part of that.
Yeah, no, I think it's going to be a very important conversation, and that's on Saturday night. So yeah, that's the fourth conversation, and it's on the Saturday night. So hopefully people will decide to tune in and join the conversation that we're having rather than watch TV on that evening.
Yeah, because I mean, without the media, then we don't get the information that you've so diligently looked into and trying to get out there. So that's a major key, isn't it?
Yeah. And then the legal panel, we have Dr. Pearl Coupe and Shabnam, and they're looking into how can the law serve human rights? And this is a really, really important discussion with the amendments to the international health regulations pending. Actually, they're due to be signed the week after our conference. And this is there are lawyers around the world who are looking into the details of this, and it will be discussed and what can be done and what needs to be done.
And I know she'd submitted evidence with Dr. Rainer Filmi recently.
Yes, exactly. Yes, and Rainer will be there as well. He will be attending via Zoom.
Great.
And then we have Christoph Plath and Dell Bigtree. They're hosting the conversation. How do we identify and address environmental challenges? So, you know, this is worthy of a conference in itself, but there's basically 3 hours to really just identify and touch on some actions that people can take to help to address these challenges. And of course, what we've asked all our panels to do is to come up with actions that people can take. You know, so it's about it's very solutions focused, as I say, and it's really about how do we co-create this better world, and how do we address each of us. Because we're enormously powerful. You know, we take one action, we have one conversation with a neighbor, or, you know, every day we actually have such power within us to change the direction of our future together. We don't have to go down this dystopian route. We can actually change things together. We just each have to start actively engaging in.
And it's so funny because you and I don't really know each other very well, but it's amazing. The same with the people's lawyer who I met. He basically, we're using the same language, even though we haven't compared sort of notes, but we are using the same language, because I go around saying the same thing. We are very powerful as individuals, but even more powerful collectively. And that's what it's about, realizing not just the power to keep ourselves healthy, but the power to influence as well, to get things right. Because a lot of people, I think, feel very weak, that they are very small, they can't do anything. It's the opposite. And I always with the butterfly effect, where the smallest thing, your thoughts or emotions, can affect everything. So you're, again, the first person I've heard as a doctor talking in the same language, which is what I love about you.
Well, thank you very much. I think that's what's so wonderful about this conference as well, is that people are just pouring in. We've got people saying, can I speak? You know, it's just, it really it has become a real gathering point of minds and hearts. And it's going to be wonderful, and I hope everybody's going to do their best to attend. I'll just go over the conversations that we're going to have. So we've got, what is our role in reclaiming science? And that's Friday afternoon. We have Robert Malone in that conversation. We have Paul Alexander, who's a doctor from Canada. We have Peter McCullough coming via Zoom. And we have Robert Kennedy coming via Zoom. I'm in that conversation. And we had Geert van den Bosch as well. Forgive me, I'm obviously going to leave out, I'm going to leave out some names, but we have really these international thinkers and scientists coming together to answer the question, how do we reclaim science? Then we have, how do we manage the health consequences of the COVID-19 chapter? We can't ignore this. There has been fallout, both mental and physical health of nations has been, and individuals has been affected, and we need to put our heads together and decide how we help people who have been harmed by COVID policies and interventions. So that's that panel. And I think it is probably a hard panel to think about, but we cannot have these conversations without thinking about and talking about this and working about how we can support people going forward who need our support and recognition and help. The conversation 3 is, how do we actively create a world in which people thrive? So this is what we've just been talking about. Every single action we take, we are not powerless. We are actually very powerful, especially when we all move in the same direction and we all want the same thing, which we do. We want a better world. So we can do this, and we can create a better a world in which people thrive. And and a better way. So conversation 4, how do we restore journalistic independence and media credibility? That's on Saturday night. Sunday morning, we have the very sober conversation about how can the law serve human rights. Very fascinating, and anybody who hasn't heard about the amendments to the international health regulations or the new proposed World Health Organization treaty or instrument or agreement or whatever they keep calling it, needs to attend this conversation for basically a summary of it, and also to be reassured and inspired about what experts are doing, but also what they can do to prevent basically a WHO power grab. And then how do we identify and address environmental health challenges? Well, the sorts of challenges that will be covered there will be fluoridation of water, contamination of water, seed sovereignty, farming, organic farming, radio frequency radiation, and so on. Obviously, it's a massive topic, and it's just a question of really highlighting some actions and raising awareness about the different issues, because again, we've sort of forgotten that we're exposed to these huge levels of chemicals and pollution and so on, and we need to start thinking about it. When we're talking about health, we have to think about the environmental challenges to our health.
We just have to look into the sky. I won't mention, but you look at the sky, you see some very interesting things in the sky, and there's the worst actually happening the last few weeks, I've noticed.
Yeah, we have to stop. We have to stop thinking that these are conspiracy theories. We have to start really looking at the science and looking at the evidence that's right in front of us.
But you know what, I think also to encourage the people who are actually actively involved in this to come out the woodwork, because actually I think a lot of these people are kept in silos, so they don't actually know what they're doing. I think the whole thing is bathed in ignorance, and that's why it's been able to be rolled out, because people are kept ignorant about what their role is in that process.
I think it's very much, our role is very much shining a light on things, we're really shining a light on things. Things can't be kept in the dark anymore. It's really time, the darkness, the light is shone in the darkness, and everything that's been hidden from us comes to light and is discussed openly and transparently. And
going back briefly to conversation 5, the law. Last year, I organized a law and justice conference. Anna de Bursray was on there. I think it was about an 8-hour, she was on for about 8 hours. I mean, that was unbelievable. But what really came out of it was the fact that what is missing, and this is part of the darkness of what we're talking about, is the heart. So I'm often, like you've actually mentioned already, we should be getting our heads together with our hearts, head and heart, the heart mind, if you like. And I think what we found is that, and there was a great reluctance to it when I organized an event before the 15th of June, because why 15th of June, 806th anniversary of Magna Carta. I thought that was significant, and we're coming up again to that date. But what was interesting was that there was a degree of fear that the barristers, lawyers didn't want to talk about, the point about the fact they didn't trust a lot of the judges, or that they didn't feel they had great faith in them to do the right thing and to follow the law under the right jurisdiction. And this is what was coming out in that last Law and Justice conference. And I think this is how we do it, is by using the heart, the intelligence of the heart. I think that's what I feel will also come out of this conference in Bath.
Yes, yeah, I absolutely agree. And one's intuition, which is basically heart making,
Absolutely, yeah.
heart decision making, rather than whenever one tries to make it a head decision, it's the other factors that influence you.
I know we shouldn't be asking you questions at this stage, but before I forget, have you come across Heart Math, which is an actual course which came out of not only Stanford University, but they're having great success with rolling this out with the police in the States, in various states. And I've done this course with the School of Remembering, Drunvalo Melchizedek in Sedona, Arizona. And you connect literally your heart physically with your tongue as an extension of your heart, is what they would say. And you can electrically connect your heart to your brain through your tongue and through the roof of your mouth. But anyway, the point is to achieve coherence between the heart and the brain, or basically the more subtle aspect, the heart and the mind. And this is how we actually deal with things. We don't get out of our calm state, but I think this is very much part of the trick about how we should be approaching all this. And I'm hoping that someone will mention this at the conference.
I'm sure it will, especially in the last panel, because the last panel is about how do we innovate new approaches to managing health. And there we have a number of visionaries, health visionaries, that will be speaking about the importance of restoring balance, both individually and collectively. And you can't talk about restoring balance without bringing in the heart and the lungs and breathing and all of that, how important
the whole package.
To connect with who we are as a whole being, and not just a brain or a whatever.
Absolutely.
Just on the subject of conversation 5, how can the law serve human rights? You were talking about the judges, and a sense that barristers don't feel they can trust the judges, and neither does the public have much faith in the legal system at the moment. It really seems geared up for, it's so expensive. It really seems geared up for corporations. It's not geared up for individual justice. And I think what we're going to see happening in the next months and years is a total revamp, because there are things, just like there are visionaries envisioning new ways of taking care of health. There are visionaries envisioning new ways around the law and how justice can be achieved.
Absolutely.
So just a few suggestions. I also just wanted to let people know that most of the in-person tickets are sold out. I think there are a few individual. So for the conference, you can attend one session, one event. So just say you want to attend the environmental challenges session, you can buy a ticket just for that event, or the new ways of envisioning health. But the tickets for the whole event are sold out, and there are individual tickets. But I think Bath's a great place to visit, and there's lots to do. There'll be lots of opportunity to network with other people, to see some of your heroes. I think Robert Malone is quite a hero these days, and also to chat with like-minded people, or have these conversations in person. But if you can't come in person, what I suggest is you buy a ticket, invite all your friends over, and actually watch all your podcast host heroes like Del Bigtree and Brett Weinstein and Neil Oliver and John Campbell. Watch them all on Saturday night, or and have dinner and snacks and bring your friends over. So we're suggesting host a watch party. So the tickets for the virtual event for the whole weekend, for the whole 7 conversations, I think it's £49. But if you invite all your friends over, well, it's not going to per head cost very much at all.
Very good point.
then you can access them, even if you don't watch them all, or if you're in Australia or whatever, you can access them on demand at any time thereafter. And we will be releasing them to the public in due course. Over a period of weeks, we'll release one or so a week. I think that was the plan. So.
Tess, I did actually check the betterwareconference.org website, and this morning wasn't working. I hope it hasn't been attacked.
Oh, that's the first I've heard about that. So I will have a look. Maybe I can.
Yeah, if you can make sure that's up and okay. And the interesting thing about Bath, of course, is it's a lovely, as you say, historic city. And of course, it's built essentially by the Romans with the Roman baths there and so on. And of course, the sort of irony is, or the interesting point is that what we have now, this dystopian situation, should we say, was built in a sort of utopian way by the Romans. But of course, in terms of the law and so on, this is our culture in the UK. We are based in England, based especially on the Roman law and this whole ethos, which is very much to do with the head. Although they had lovely art and so on, which is of course to do with the heart. But very much the nature of the system we're dealing with is Roman in origin. And this is why I find it fascinating that this whole thing is based in Bath, which is very much a Roman city.
There's another reason why it's fascinating that it's based in Bath, and I just want to say that I've just checked the conference website and it's working. So maybe you put in the wrong, entered correctly. But another reason why it's so fascinating that it's happening in Bath is that Bath, I heard, was almost the start of the National Health Service, NHS, in a way, because it was the first. Because it was a healing city and it was known for its water. It's the only hot spring in the UK, because of that, in the 1800s, it drew people to come for healing therapies. And then the Royal Mineral Hospital was established, and so people were coming to the hospital. So that. It developed that kind of treatment center that then became hospital, kind of hospital service. And so it's really, really interesting that it's now the place where we will be rethinking and redesigning new ways of taking care of health. And water is so essential to that too. And
so we're going to have a new way will be sprung from Bath.
Yes, and we will ask that there are spring spirits, I believe, and guardians of the spring. So we will ask for their blessing
and their permission, and then the thank you at the end. I hope.
Absolutely. We're very grateful to them for facilitating this wonderful conference.
Maybe we should be asking them questions today as well as yourself. Have you come to the end of your presentation, do you think, Tess?
Yes, I have. Thank you.
That's fantastic. That was absolutely delightful. Thank you so much. And very clear slides and information. I loved it. Daniel or anyone else might want to have any questions for Tess now. Dan?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really glad, your approach to this is a holistic one. You're coming to this whole health arena, if you like, from an integrated holistic one. And I picked up on certain areas which kind of interface in your kind of topics which people can access on your website, such as nature and spending time in it, organic and traditional farming, soil and soil health, nutrition, sunbathing. It's just really interesting when you trace it back to this, it seems to me, this loss with the relationship with our environment, this kind of split which has happened in history, and so many of these health issues arise from that. Just a question on, could you tell me a little bit about water? I just have a question about water, and obviously aware that the government has legislated for putting fluoride in the water. Can you tell?
Yes, yeah, we're really concerned about the fluoridation
Yeah.
of water, and we have a fluoridation expert, Joy Warren, who will be speaking at the conference, and also others who will be speaking about how to clean up water.
Yeah.
But it is very worrying. The thing that I think many people don't know, and what I didn't know until we started doing the research for the conference and for this particular environmental panel, is that the fluoride that comes in our drinking water is not pharmaceutical grade fluoride. It's actually a waste product from the chemical industry. And they would have to dispose of it in a safe way. But because they sell it on, they then don't have to dispose of it. So it's really quite disturbing that a waste product is being put into our drinking water, ostensibly for the protection of children's teeth. Now, we know the best way to protect children's teeth is actually not to give them sugar. It's actually to give them healthy food. So it's really putting the cart before the horse to say, oh, we'll feed our kids anything, sweet drinks and sugary foods, and then we'll give them fluoride in the drinking water to prevent tooth decay. But not only will we give them fluoride, we'll give everybody in the whole world from all ages fluoride. You know, it just makes absolutely no sense at all. And I'm sure the experts will be able to put it a lot clearer and a lot better, but fluoride in our drinking water is really a concern, and we really should be saying we will not tolerate this. No.
And I'd actually checked with someone I gave a lift to once through a sort of, I think it was BlaBlaCar or something like that. And he was a water expert. And I asked him this question, the same question, and he confirmed they were putting industrial fluoride in the water supply. Now, since then, I checked with my local supplier. They said they don't put that in anymore. So I think it behooves everyone to ask the individual water companies.
Everybody can go onto their water supplier page, certainly in the UK, and they have to list what is in the water, so you can see what the level of fluoride is in your town.
And just like the water should be, I hope they're being transparent about what they are putting in the water.
Well, that's exactly it. You know, can we trust these corporations anymore? I heard also, just in terms of who owns our water, you know, that many councils' water is not even owned by companies in the UK. You know, we have, so there's international companies, corporations. We must remember they are dead entities. They have no moral obligation to protect the well-being of people or even be at all concerned about people's health. Their only obligation is to their shareholders and to make money, to be profit driven. They have to make profit. So we have these corporate bodies doing whatever they like and owning these very essential resources like water and like farmland and seeds and so on. It's very concerning.
Well, I talk about the water being part of the resources in common. Of course, what the argument is when that water is treated, it takes energy, it takes resources and so on to actually deal with that purification. Now, if that's an argument which is on solid foundations, it's debatable. But what I would say as a retort to that, why don't we go back to what we used to do and find through dowsing our own water supplies? In fact, we converted a stables many years ago, and we had our own water supply there. But I think it would be something that would be very interesting for people to get into, because I think also we need contingencies. And I think part of the lesson from my viewpoint is we cannot rely on a centralized system for protecting our health, our well-being, and in terms of logistics, because we looked at recently, the logistics have been a little bit wobbly, right? So what if your local supplier can't supply? There's a problem with the system. I think we all need our contingencies. What do you think about the idea of dowsing for water, Tess? Is that a good idea?
I think it's a wonderful idea. I think it's a wonderful idea. It would be interesting to put it to the panel. You know, if you're coming to the conference, to actually, because there is a Q&A section after, and it would be interesting to hear from the experts what they think about that. Yeah, I mean,
I would love to be there. I would love to be speaking as well. You can't stop me speaking, I know, you've noticed already. But I have an art fair to manage on the 21st. But if I can get there before or after, that'd be fantastic. But I'd love to be there for sure.
I can't stay that much longer, but would you be interested in me showing that little animated video?
Please, if you could do.
Let me just...
And then after this cartoon, we're going to say goodbye to Tess if she has to go. And then we're going to be having Daniel speak his piece about his Gardens of Hope.
So I just have to go to the, oh gosh, share. Can you see that?
Yep, we got it.
Right here we go. Should be some audio. There we go.
I noticed that Stitch wasn't ending up in stitches over that, of the demise of Sparky.
Yeah, we haven't changed it. It's exactly as Jordan, the animator, created it. And we're very grateful he won a small token of our appreciation.
So I hope you're going to be playing it.
Interpretation of the story.
Yeah, I think it's great, and it'll probably inspire other people to do, you know, similar little cartoons, because the short and sweet, I think, are the way to go forward to capture the imagination and the interest of the kids, especially.
Yeah.
Tess, thank you very much indeed. Lovely presentation, and I'm hoping to see you again soon. But I'll do my best to be there in Bath, May 20th, 22nd, if not by Zoom. And those tickets by Zoom are available still.
Yes.
Not the physical attendance.
And please invite your friends. Please invite your friends.
Yeah, great.
You know, make a party of it. It won't be depressing. It will be uplifting and inspiring. So
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Daniel. Bye.
Thank you.
All the best. Thanks, Tess.
Bye.
And so, guys, we're going to be talking. Daniel's going to be talking now. Daniel, would you? Because we first met actually a few weeks ago in Stratford, but I knew about you a while back before then. But still don't know too much, and that's why I'm excited to hear about what you have to say, because the idea of garden, I've been working on my garden recently more than ever to grow food. Now you've got Gardens of Hope, but what I'd like to do is, first of all, is just ask about you yourself, your interests, your background and experience, and then lead into what you're doing with your vision of how you'd like to see the world through your project.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Firstly, just to say a note on what you're doing, New World Visions, I think it's brilliant because it's of the essence. Because
thank you.
From my understanding, the vision is the starting point, and the why maybe one of the reasons we find ourselves in the position we are now is for lack of a vision, which is a compelling alternative, should we say, to the one of, should we say, the neoliberalist agenda, which is, you know, ever increasing consumption and production, essentially. So from my perspective, the starting point actually is a creative one, which takes its place, like being able to imagine how it could be different, how things could be different. And a really good question to frame that is, what if? you know, because it invites these possibilities. So I think this is really at the heart of it, what we're sharing here. In terms of myself, just a little bit of background. So before, in the last 2 years, leading up into the last 2 years, I've I have a background in, I began sort of very focused as an athlete, should we say, as a footballer, in sport, but always drawn to the creative aspect of this. So I was inspired by the Brazilians and how they played, and in the modern day players like Ronaldinho and Zico and before him. But so this kind of, and so having played, I was with Exeter City for 7 years, and had short spells with Bristol City and other teams. But so leading on from then, I kind of, you know, I've always engaged with art, and it seemed to be a context to maybe the constrictions of that sporting arena to kind of give a kind of deeper expression to things. And so I lived in Spain for a couple of years in southern Spain, and had exhibited there, and here also in North Devon in 2011.
So you are an artist as well?
Yeah, I mean, I
painted. And this is your work behind you?
Yeah. It is, yes.
Beautiful.
So, but obviously, as you know, the world of art is, you know, unless you're going to maybe be off, it's very few people, if they're going to give authentic expression to their vision, are going to be, there's not many who make some kind of trade-off or compromise with the market, are going to sort of make a living from that. Yeah. So gardens, working with gardens, that's something that I've done for the last 12, 13 years, and have trained in permaculture design, and forest gardening with someone called Martin Crawford in South Devon also. So this kind of has taken the you know, this is what my primary amount of time and attention is taken with this aspect now. So yeah, just
you've gone from football field to growing fields.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, that's a good way of describing it.
Couldn't resist that one.
But just leading, if I just relate to leading up into the last 2 years, leading up to where we find ourselves now, in maybe about 5 years ago, as I'm sure you experienced where you are, and across the country, we experienced this ongoing onslaught from the government in relation to national planning policy, so-called, and the ever-increasing uprooting of our local environment and communities by planning in the name of affordable housing and so-called sustainable development. So kind of what led me into the sort of political arena, as such, was in the end, there's experiencing a huge ache and pain in relation to just where I live, walking out every day and seeing this uprooting of the environment. And so this led on to my creating something called a Torridge Common Ground, which was a non-party political platform as such, in 2019.
I like the name. Yeah. I like the name, Common Ground.
Yeah, Common Ground. Yeah. We spent quite a lot of, Common Ground was a really, spent a lot of time to kind of zoom in on what that name would be, to kind of pick out what the essence of what it was about.
And I think the language is so important because, first of all, it captures the imagination. Ideally, a name should be, or even a strapline, should be getting the essence of something, and it makes you think, oh yeah, or it puts a smile on your face and it makes you realize, oh, it's a positive thing.
Yes.
So I think very well thought
Yes,
out. Yeah.
it was, you know, as we know, however, so much of language has been appropriated
Yeah,
by a
yeah.
global elite who use such words as sustainability, you know,
And inverted it all.
you know, yeah. So everything's been inverted. So sometimes, you know, found that actually the common ground, which the meaning for when we used this, came up with this name, was not necessarily the common ground which other people envisaged.
Including common purpose.
Yeah, it could well
All
be.
these CEOs of the, because we did some research on this, of the county councils.
Yes.
Very interesting area in terms of the power base of where we should be putting our attention, I think. They're all common purpose graduates, is what they term themselves.
Are you talking about civil servants of county council?
Well, yeah, because I'm not going to talk about my strategy to do with the uncivil servants, but I mean, because I'm going to keep it positive here. But yeah, this is where I think we need to be focusing our attention as well,
That's
just
really
to show them the consequences, evidentially, of their decision making, whether it's affirmative or negative. But I mean, just about consequences, and that would we want to be serving uncivil servants? So just leave it at that.
Absolutely. When you when you find that these entities, starting from the UK government itself to your local county council, district council, town council, are essentially set up as companies, corporations, profit-making entities who are totally subservient to the statutory regulations of the government, that essentially we find that, you know, democracy, there seems to be a huge conflict of interest, or where the allegiance ultimately lies when people how they present themselves, you know, for their local community and what they're going to do in their local community, and when they step into that public office, should we say, their whole allegiance changes. And
and it becomes a little bit opaque, maybe, and a little bit of lack of transparency goes with that territory.
The lines get very blurred. So from this Tory Common Ground, we got, in 2019, we had 9 people elected at a local level, at town level, and district level. And this was kind of inspired, if you like, this non-party political platform by what happened in Frome, with, I don't know if you're familiar with Peter McFadden, and the Independents for Frome, who, going back into 2016, I think it might have been, they were very disillusioned with their local government, local council, and they were in the pub, and they just said, well, what can we actually do about this? And they said, well, why don't we, you know, put ourselves forward as you know, but being non-party political, because we found that, you know, only 30% of people at local elections normally only bother to vote, and normally they're of the elderly population, and they're voting for a political party, whether it be Tory, Labour, etc. So there's 70% of people who are totally disengaged with the process, and not interested in party politics. So they put their candidates forward, and there were 16 seats. And in, I think it was 2016, they got 11 of those 16 seats, you know, so they, and then into the following elections, they got all 16 seats in Frome. So they got 16 of the 16 seats. You know, they began to do things in a very different way. They introduced much more informality into the process, allowed people from the community into the meetings to just participate freely, you know, it was, they took much more risks, and it was very much beginning to look like what maybe democracy should look like, which is putting the power in the hands of the people, and giving them a voice. So to put the shared values and principles and vision of the community at the heart of local democracy. So that's what we did. I was elected in my local town council here in Northam, which is in Torridge in North Devon, in 2019 also. I stayed with that for 1 year, coming to the
as an independent or
yes,
part of your,
under Torridge Common Ground. So as a candidate. But in 2020, I stood down because the position was utterly untenable to actually do anything. It was just staggering, the level of how confusing the woods for the trees at every step, so it was
hang on, what point did you get all 16 of your candidates in?
That was in Frome, so that was what we were in.
It was a different place, of course.
We got 9, in 2019 we got 9 candidates elected. So, but as I say, I stepped down in 2020 when the so-called Corona pandemic came along, realizing that given the total inability to have an honest conversation in that context previously about anything in relation to planning, development, putting the interests of the community, first, giving them a voice, they certainly weren't going to open up any conversation or be open to ask any questions about the global pandemic agenda. And so it was at that point which I stepped down. One of the aspects which I was involved in that year, or created, was a space called Community Encounters, which was in the local village here, which was a space which it was a monthly space to invite a new conversation around community. So it had various activities taking place in that space, from obviously lots of local food and produce, crafts, traders, but it also had like a forum at the end where councillors, like myself and someone else, would share about what the council was doing with the people in a very much more open way. It had music, food, so it was a starting point to really connect a local council with its community. But
I think that's a great way to do it, because actually what you're doing is incentivizing people to get there, not just a dry, boring talk
exactly.
platform or people talking to people. It was encouraging a two-way conversation, but actually making a very good experience with the music.
Absolutely.
And that's what it should be, that community spirit, adding the spirit to the place.
It starts. This was
a really good example for other people to follow, I think.
That seemed to me the starting point is starting in a space where actually people could just be themselves and their real hopes and concerns about what was really going on, not saying that being constricted to having an egg timer put in front of them and 3 minutes, or being cut out by the town clerk, etc.
I've noticed that was big going on. I mean, my friend Magdalena, who's originally Polish, down in Devon, you might know her. But I would suggest getting in touch, or I can put you in touch with her, because she's doing great things down there. And I think everyone can learn from each other. And she was holding her town council to account, because I could see on the videos that they were sharing how rigid and almost aggressive the councillors were, alienating the population, and certainly alienating my friend and her friends, who were just not. They wanted transparency. They wanted answers, which they weren't getting. And so even the media weren't very sympathetic. They were all for the council. And so what my friend did with her friends, they were also taking the media potentially to court, for misrepresenting what the questions that they were asking, what sort of people they were. They found they were being miscast, misrepresented, and certain names, labels, which were inappropriate. And anyway, so without going into detail about that, what the basic point was that they felt that the council were not representing the people.
Absolutely.
And that when we're thinking, if these people can't represent the people, they shouldn't be there.
Yeah,
they have
absolutely.
to go one way or another. And let's
Absolutely.
find the ways in which we can get that representation, which reflects the community.
So one consideration which I don't know if I would ever consider standing again would be that I think that if you think of an election when people put their details through and you receive something in the door about voting for this particular candidate, and and they say they're going to do X and Y, and they're going to sort of fight planning and development in your local area, or green certain areas. But when they get into they're elected, it's like you won't hear from them for 4 years again, other than an email correspondence. The whole relationship has lost, and it's all about the relationship, it seems to me. So I would never consider the design is designed to doesn't enable this relationship, organic relationship between people and public servants to happen. But if you had something like put yourself forward, but you said, do not vote for me, please do not vote for me unless we are going to work together over this next 4 years, and we're going to hold a space every week, and you are going to come along and you're going to participate, and we're going to work together in this. But otherwise, do not vote for me. And it's
inviting participation. That's the essence of this. And saying, engage with me, otherwise there's no point in being here.
Exactly. And creating spaces to open up that conversation and what they look like. Inviting spaces, as you say.
Yeah.
So in the what transpired with this non-party political platform, which I was involved in, when the COVID era came along, I began to ask some questions about what was, the credibility of the pandemic, so-called, and it was very revealing that not one person who I'd worked with for 2 years was willing to even look at the questions.
No. Exactly the same with Magdalena. They asked for the evidence, based on what the council's proposals were and what they were spending money on, big money, which is coming from central government, and they couldn't answer. That was, so you've obviously found the same situation.
Absolutely, but these were actually these people who we didn't come from a position. We came together as a sort of people from this community to work together to put people in their local councils to truly represent the people in those communities. And so you would have, and it was common ground. So I would have, it just goes to say you can have a word common ground and the name, and it appears like the thing, but the map isn't the territory, because when you hit some uncomfortable areas, it's like, it's just a closed shop. The shop closes. So this kind of led myself into asking some maybe deeper questions around what this is really about, and how, what are the drivers of this, which are how the sort of cognitive dissonance, if you like, which has come about through not even wanting, just a closed shop, wanting to ask any questions or to engage, and what seems to emerge is that, am I my own, or have I chosen to be bought and sold by the market? That seems to be the question, and many of the people have, without unwittingly, allowed themselves to be bought and sold by the market. And so then they find themselves in being blackmailed in some form by certain policies, and they have to comply. because they didn't maintain their own autonomy and independence, and they'd sold at a certain level into a system and its toxic kind of agendas. But on a positive note,
I knew that was coming.
yeah, we're just setting the stage.
But it's important to establish the background, as you very cogently have done that.
Yes,
and to show the motivation for doing what you've done.
absolutely. So we, so then in the last 2 years, I've began, obviously, distributing the light paper that was, refreshing in the local community, and then we began a North Devon assembly, which was, well, what an assembly really essentially means: a public, like a public forum, a space where people could actually engage with and grapple with what's some questions and issues around what the context we now find ourselves.
Assemble and interact, not just listen to the councillors. Yes,
exactly. What emerged from some of those meetings for myself was like distilling kind of what the core essence, if you like, of this is about, and what came to me is these two aspects of law and land. These two seem to me to be
law and land. Yeah.
Law, this understanding of law, this relation or loss of relation with the land and earth seem to be the central, if you like, tenets, if you like, which then things come from there. That's what I'm currently engaged with. So we have we've been running a lawful action group in here in North Devon, which is meeting, we've just had a little bit of a pause, but we've been meeting every 2 weeks. Working through, I did a course called Law for Mankind with someone called Greg Paul and John Little. And John Little. I would highly recommend it. It's got what is it called? Knowledge Share. So it's called Law for Mankind Knowledge Share.
Okay.
And I'd highly recommend it to anyone who wants to really get a grasp of this lawful aspect as distinct from legal. This is my main primary focus, I think, for this year we're in. So the main focus in this is just working through some of this material from this course, which is, understand how to write notices, how to understanding the distinction between law and as distinct from legal, how to bring your
lawful and legal.
Lawful and legal, it's a primary distinction. How to set your own law, how to bring your court forward into the world so these are some of the areas which we're sort of been working through. So I'm in the process of writing, begun like a escalation of correspondence leading into notices to public servants in where I live here.
But that's a separate thing to the Gardens of Hope, isn't it?
Yes. Well, it's separate and it's part of a whole.
Right.
So you mentioned Satish Kumar earlier, and he's written a book called Soil, Soul, and Society. And it seemed to me that those 3 words seem to encapsulate the kind of essence, again, law and land, but it goes a bit further with society as well of this. Because
now I remember that you were talking about this.
Yes,
that's right.
yes.
And I think that's one of the first things I saw coming out of you. And then we had a brief conversation at the table in Stratford. So it's interesting that you came up with the 3 S's there.
And I didn't, so I don't want to with, you know, these are the words. There was also a book by Alistair McClintosh called Soil and Soul,
Right.
which is a brilliant book, and it kind of weaves together sort of activism with, you know, spirituality, with the earth, and all sorts of things. And it's based in the Highlands of Scotland, and how they managed to overturn sort of a takeover corporate agenda in a mining community. So
was it a recent thing? Was it based on a recent incident?
It's been out for a long time. I think it was written in I don't know, 2010, something like that.
But no, but this century.
Yes. Oh yes. Yeah. Indeed. So soil and soul, soul and society. Soil denoting the ecological aspect. You know, the relation with the earth. That, you know, if you have healthy soil, you know, you look after the soil, you know, you'll have healthy plants. You know, in the same way, in the human sense, you know, if your biome, your immune system is healthy, then you know, disease comes along, and your immune system is brilliantly designed to be able to protect, you know,
foundation of our health.
Absolutely.
Bio, what is it called again? The
biome.
The biome of our stomach, but also the foundation of our health in terms of growing food is the soil.
Yes, the soil.
Very similar things in a way.
Absolutely. So this and so it also denotes this relation with the land and our interrelationship with this, and the central aspect to many of the issues which we face today is that split, you know, which we have created, you know, which has a long history. You know, you could trace it back, obviously, the age of the so-called Enlightenment, and the kind of you know, the split of which Descartes, you know, I think therefore I am, and the kind of philosophers like Bacon, and, you know, the kind of, you know, the work and the Newtonian mechanics, or the classical mechanics, where the world is seen as this one great machine, and everything within it is simply cogs in that machine, and this, you know,
it's a great exploration of the minutiae of the mechanics of life in some ways. And I think that's the conversation I had with Satish when I watched sorry to interrupt, just to briefly mention this, that Satish was talking on video to Richard Dawkins. I've got one of Richard Dawkins' books, and we both agreed that Richard had a great mind, but he wasn't connecting it to his heart. And that the whole thing, essence of what we've been through recently, and what Richard is about, is looking at the minutiae and not how it's connected.
Yes.
And well, not how it's connected to other dimensions of life in terms of us, planet, and how we are nature.
Yes.
Not these separate elements.
Yes.
Which are disconnected from the greater life. Yeah, sorry.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a founding understanding, because that paradigm, if you like, coming from the Enlightenment, has kind of led to people in moving into areas of high specialization, where they are no longer able to see what they're doing within a wider context, and how that connects up to you know, a whole of any kind.
And this has been the great success of the inversion of the great ideals, is that it has separated people from themselves and from the essence of life. So therefore we don't actually have the knowledge about what is good for us, as we were saying with Tess as well, of course. Absolutely. About how we sustain ourselves in a healthy way.
Absolutely. And this, maybe this loss of this relationship with, you know, obviously the Industrial Revolution then took that another step further, where people were cleared off the land and, you know, bulldozed into the cities, essentially
regimented,
working factories. But this relationship even in the simplicity of living within the rhythms of the seasons, you know, and even each day, which has its own, sunrise, midday, sundown, night,
and fluctuations in rhythms. Yeah,
that's a rhythm. And when you're out of alignment with that rhythm because you're on your smartphone punching into a virtual world all day long on social media, you're totally out of alignment with that and so these are utterly free. And
isn't it amazing when you think about it, Daniel, that our great friends on Facebook now call themselves Meta. It is literally a meta world they're wanting to push people into. Absolutely. Which means kind of outside the reality of the world in which we find ourselves, and into another world.
Yes.
So it is literally in the name they've chosen, the new name, it's a disconnect from what we have, the beauty of what we have. Yeah. And so they're telling us straight away, but I shouldn't be talking about this. I should, that's being naughty. No, I should be, but it's about the context, about what is what, and what is in front of us, and what is happening to us. We have to be aware of what's happening to us.
Absolutely.
In order to wake up and do something about it. Yeah.
So it's this because the fourth industrial revolution reset, should we say, is a meta narrative. It's an encompassing meta narrative. And if there is no alternative meta narrative which is a compelling one to draw, like acts as a kind of like a draw or an allure, if you like, for people to move into, then essentially nature will abort that vacuum and people just pulled into it because they're looking for some kind of meaning and connection, and they'll move into that. So this loss and the establishment of this relationship with the deeper rhythms of nature and the earth and the soil, I think is the central one. Essential.
I love it because I mean, one of those 12 principles, universal principles I mentioned, is about rhythm.
Yes.
And there's a sort of gentleness about rhythm.
Absolutely.
I can hear the wind out here right now, and it's a sort of, it lulls you into a lovely, it's like a lullaby. I mean, people talk about the sound of the trees, and you hear that through the creeks and the wind, the air that rushes through them and so on, and that how each individual tree has a sound of its own, unique, which, it is unique with its branches. They're very much based on the same principles, but they're still unique.
Yeah.
So I love the idea of the rhythm thing.
Yes. So that's a central understanding in itself. Is the there's how do you create unity in diverse but have diversity at the same time?
Yeah. It's the coherence of those rhythms,
isn't
it? Because we're talking a bit earlier on about the coherence of the heart and mind.
Yeah. And maybe
how these things interact in a harmonious way.
And maybe that moves on to this soul aspect, is that coherence, which could be translated, is the deeper aspect in many ways, because it is you could call it the heart aspect, but it is also the higher law, which is acting upon us all the time, whether we're receptive to it or not, which you could say is the law of love and truth. It actually is a law, and it's acting upon us. Whether we choose to recognize it or not is another matter.
It's simply how things work. It's not an imposition. It's actually just simply how things work. As I often say, this is what science should be about. We're looking for how things work, and this is just simply the law of life, if you like, isn't it?
So you have, if you could frame it in this understanding of the soul in its wider context, you could, this law understanding is pretty central. They interlink, if you like, because if you like, imagine a hierarchy of law. Below that, you have the principles of science and mathematics, if you like, which complement this, whether they're aspects of synchronicity or the kind of rule of attraction or gravity. These are actually principles as well, which are here, and they're acting upon us as well.
Well, what I'm saying to you now is that I love your sense of the holistic, just as I mentioned that to Tess. I mean, that's what is great about the fact, the synchronicity of you two. It kind of almost happened by accident. I mean, nothing in a way happens by accident. But what I love about you two is you are both holistic, and you have this great wisdom and depth understanding about how life works and should work in the way that we should be organizing things or not.
Yes.
But just really be aware of how life literally works and what the rhythms are. And that's why if we pay attention to that,
yes,
we'll find life a lot easier.
absolutely.
And this is my experience as well. That's why I value you, what you have to say, and
It's,
about and your growing projects, the community projects. And I keep mentioning the Gardens of Hope.
okay, yeah, let's go to the, I didn't get into.
I love the idea, I love the name.
Yeah, Gardens of Hope is so it takes on various strands, but in you know, the aspect which I'm engaged with on my practical in the local level here, because it's a larger vision which I can share with you, but you know, in the concrete of where I am, how that manifests is, you know, I locally here, so I work with 4 plots of land, you know, so I have our garden I call the kitchen garden.
Are these plots separate altogether?
4 different plots locally that I
yeah. So in different areas around your village area,
locality.
Yeah.
So I include
the first one was
the home garden, which I call the kitchen garden, which I've spent the last 5 years creating, which is it's not a very big space. It's probably how would we say 15 meters by this is very crude, 6 or 7 meters, something like that.
Yeah.
But it's like a mini food forest, if you like. I have 15 fruit trees in there and lots of edible perennial plants.
15 is quite a good
number. It is in a small space. So, but just these plots of land which I'm working on. Then I have a market garden, which is I'm growing on 24 raised beds. And then I work and another, if you like, mini food forest plot, which I'm growing on. Then I have I'm working with a small plot, which I call the trial garden, which is where I'm more experimenting or playing around with, you know, different ideas. And I see it like these spaces as more, rather than they're more like a commons in some ways. So that I'm opening them that as much as possible to people. And then I have my mother, who is the head of the propagating department, should we say, on this very micro scale, and so you could call that the nursery garden. So nice. I propagate the seeds, and she pots them on, and then, you know, the plug plants which I grow and sell at, I do a market once a week.
Where do you do the market? In the town, village?
Bideford, in a place called Bideford, where I am. And I've just begun a market which I've created, called the Gardens of Hope food, what do we call it? Artisan food, produce and crafts market, which is a monthly market. And that's more than just a market, because it's all a produce, but it's also a space where people can bring their seeds along and do a seed swap. Space where they can just have an informal conversation about various things.
That's interesting. The seed swap. I just wrote an article in Brighter Times, not that edition, but the subsequent edition, called Banking on Abundance. And I'm talking about people saving seeds, because the big corporations, I won't go into who they are again, but we know that the plan is to actually kind of license everything and claim copyright seeds. Anyway, so the idea was just to keep your seeds generate more, and doing the seed swaps, great idea, like people do plant swaps and so on. And we can, creating those spaces, people can learn from each other.
Absolutely.
And swap.
It's a really good thing. I mean, I've also from last season got into the practice of saving my seeds, and so it's such a, as you say, it's such a simple thing that people can do, and it's a great way to establish again a level of autonomy and independence from the ever monopolizing colonizing system.
And a contingency, of course.
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
in case we need it, which is likely.
Yeah, so there's a brilliant lady, I don't know you're familiar with, or the people called Vandanta Shiva.
Oh yeah, the Indian lady.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So she does with she does a lot. She talks a lot about seed saving. It's
yeah, she does.
And, there's some very good materials even on YouTube, which she talks about.
Yeah, correct.
So seed saving, we do, and then I have a few little stores, shops, only a couple, but I'm going to have a couple more possibilities where I just have gardens of hope, and plants outside the shops, and people,
Oh, great.
Very simple, but it's the way, it's, and now just topping them up every week, and people.
But it looks great. It's the aesthetics which feeds the soul, isn't it?
Yeah.
And to smile on people's faces, it softens the environment.
That's key.
And it's something that is very practical.
Absolutely.
I mean, Plato said, have anything that is beautiful or practical, but ideally both.
Absolutely.
The utilitarian and the beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. It's in a kind of an environment which is becoming ever more kind of uniform and concreted, wherever you can green the desert, should we say, I think is really pretty central.
So in a nutshell, I know you want to say something else there, but I just got to ask you, sorry, but when you say Gardens of Hope, what do you mean by that? So is it the different aspects to this? It's not one location in particular, it's a concept, is it?
Okay. So yeah, I would, Gardens of Hope is is this, which I'm specifically doing, which is that it has very different aspects.
Multifaceted, yeah.
So this is the sort of enterprise aspect, but it's also a vision. So the vision relates to this wider, which is like this what if question. So it begun, there's a brilliant in a place called Liège in Belgium, where through the transition movement, a group of people decided they wanted to create a food and wildlife belt which weaved and connected Liège together. And they had this vision for this, which was supported by, cooperative outlets. And, they began, this is, I think, in 2015, and, they began with creating one cooperative outlet. And in the space of 3 years, I think they had up to 15 cooperative outlets. They had like micro farms, vineyards, an amazing array of various sort of projects, which kind of, acted as a sort of like a food and wildlife belt, if you like, because when you're planting a garden, you're also creating giving more space,
biodiversity.
So it's kind of on that vision which inspired me to go a similar something along these lines.
That's a really good reference, because this is what it's about for me, is that highlighting things that are actually happening or happened to inspire people to do the same or similar.
I could so it really, I mean, just briefly, I could read that to you, just a brief outline if you like.
Yeah, please.
I don't know, have you seen it before, which I put together?
Can't remember. I don't think so.
So I'll begin. Just briefly, began. What if we were bold and decisive and put our energies into aiming at a future we were excited about, instead of acquiescing to the single prescribed one the UK government is rolling out in conjunction with the global 1% money machine, namely the fourth industrial revolution, prepared by a non-elected group such as the WEF. I'll move on. I won't go into those because I know you want to focus on that aspect. But moving into the more specifics, what if we intentionally set out, instead of this fourth industrial revolution, technocracy, to co-create a mosaic of projects in our local communities across the UK, animated and united around a common threefold vision of soil, soul, and society? What if the organizing principle for this vision was a food and wildlife belt that weaved and connected our local communities together across the country through a diverse range and beautiful mosaic of urban food forests, market gardens, allotments, forage areas, community orchards, vineyards, microfarms, medicinal gardens, oat fields, parks, playing fields, gardens, commons, forestry, paths, tracks, edible schools, cooperative outlets and shops? What if through this great regeneration process, we change the design of the spaces that surround us in our communities and how we relate to them, by way of reconnecting and embedding ourselves once more within the living earth and its cycles of day and night and the rhythms of the seasons? What if in doing so, we inspired a great reskilling and culture of participation in urban food production? What if this was seen as much as an overall health, well-being, planning and development strategy as it was a wildlife one? We could just as well put our energies and creativity into growing living systems and delivering a legacy that we could be proud to leave for future generations to come, one that heals the future instead of a killing system that steals it, sells it in the present and calls it GDP and the fourth industrial revolution. So that kind of is just beginning to open up a wider meta possibility of how people can begin to.
Yeah, well, it's inspirational. I mean, I write creative words, poetry, perform it and so on, but I think this is important to talk in these ways, as I say, to inspire, because that vision I love the idea of mosaic.
Yeah.
I love things like mosaic tables, for instance, as well. But
yeah.
It's when you can see the individuality, but all connected in a way, in a very beautiful way, sort of pattern. It's a very lovely idea, because it also encourages individualism, as well as that connectivity, which I think is the most important thing. To get the combination, we celebrate our different colors.
Yeah.
It's not this nation or that culture, is actually everything together, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
But there's the EU, where we know that was going down the wrong path in a way that it was actually wanting to control. Not that was made known, but actually what I loved about the idea of the EU was that we have all this multifaceted aspects of cultures. We can celebrate our differences, celebrate our colors in a unified context, where we're actually a mutually supportive union. But as I say, that we now know, those of us who have researched it, it was hijacked. That was probably always the plan, to offer something that was potentially great, but actually take people down a certain path. But what you're talking about is that great vision, that great beauty of multifaceted sharing, which is connected to nature.
And I think
reminding us that we are part of nature.
Yes. And it's kind of, when I say it's real, in the sense that when it's based in real experience, not a kind of virtual one or a theoretical one, because you learn by relationship, but rather than by ideas in a textbook, essentially. When you create a garden, you enter into a relationship with that space, and it's more, you have to enter into a different you come into a different alignment if you're receptive to so many things which are changing all the time, and the processes which are, you know, of the seasons, and you know, all sorts of dynamics are taking place. And it's
very good, important point. Being receptive, in other words, being aware.
yes.
It talks about being sensitive, and you learn that from growing a garden, growing food, tending to things with
Yes,
care. You have to respond to what's happening, not just your imposition.
absolutely. This is a central understanding, because again, that sort of that mindset, which you can, you know, a lot of it can be traced back to the Enlightenment idea, where you split the material and the spiritual, should we say, is that, you know, in the principles of permaculture, should we say, is that it's really a shift in perception foundationally of how you're looking at it. Rather than coming to a space and having a preconceived idea of what you're going to do in that space and what it's going to be, you enter into that space and what it wants to do, and you start by appreciating what it's already doing and what's already there, and you have a very light touch to complement that, you know. And so that's a very different, like, it's two different minds. It's like two different worlds.
I'm absolutely on board with you there, because what I'm doing in my garden, I've turned it over to largely food growing in these raised beds, these new concepts, I call it. But actually, what I love is the finesse from nature itself. I love surprises. So I'm guessing you'll be with me on this, that you probably do the same thing. I allow nature to reveal what it wants to reveal, because, you know, different soils and environments will be very good at growing certain things. There'll be a natural abundance of certain flowers or foods and so on. And I like that balance. And it is the delicate things and the variety of form, which really stimulates and gives me great pleasure. But that combination of nature growing as well as and the delight of that, but in combination with me growing things specifically, maybe in a grid form or whatever. What I've done in my beds, for instance, I've got carrots and potatoes growing in the sides, carrots on the top, and I finessed it with some herbs like rocket around the edges. So I've got almost like a formal garden in some ways in these wheeled raised beds, where in theory you'd be able to push it around, but actually you can't, because unless you have two people. That combination of the wild and the formal, I think, is the answer.
It is. And there's the Martin Crawford in South Devon, this is one of the pioneers of forest gardening, which is the sort of ancient practice of, you know, gardens, you know, in the East, in places like Thailand for thousands of years, and it's kind of been totally lost. But there's a guy called, I think, Martin Hart or John Hart, I can't remember, in the 50s or 60s, 1950s, 60s, who kind of began to pioneer and bring back this understanding of forest gardening. And it's so it's so much it is a kind of a light touch in every sense, because you're growing perennial plants which have a life cycle, you know, they go on and on, year on year. But you're optimizing the growing space, because you're mimicking the patterns of nature. So like in a forest garden, in a forest, you have different tiers, if you like. So that term stacking. So you might have a different level canopy. You might have a high canopy, which might be a lime tree or something. And then a mid canopy layer might be a top fruit, like of some kind, an apple or something like that. And then you might have your kind of lower canopy, which could be a shrub layer. A lower canopy like a soft fruit. Like a gooseberry or something of this kind.
There's these different levels, and the same, not just above but below.
Absolutely.
So the idea of growing things together, where the roots are taking the nutrients from different levels of the soil. So, and of course, some things together can actually help protect your food from insects, for instance.
Absolutely.
So we don't need to use the chemicals.
Totally.
And you want to repel slugs. Well, maybe there's different ways of doing it rather than using chemistry.
Yeah, diversity again is like diversity creates resilience. So, you know, the more diversity you have, the more resilient, you know, your garden concept is going to be to any susceptible to any pest diseases. And even if you know certain plants are attacked, it's not really an issue because nature is completely abundant anyway. You know,
people find it's balanced and it is abundant.
It's the monocult when you're creating monocultures of just one crop. This is where
it goes wrong.
It goes wrong. So forest gardens are a brilliant way. And here's the amazing thing: if you think of when you're a conventional way of growing, if even growing vegetables, you're often turning the soil. It's annual vegetables, so it's a lot of work. Even if you're doing a no-dig approach, which someone like Charles Dowding,
I was just thinking, Charles
Dowding.
Yeah,
he's one of the pioneers of no-dig.
I started it, and then I had to move on from this great allotment, which was a very social, lovely environment. But I had to move on. But and just talking about moving on very quickly, I just wanted to mention agriturismo. Have you heard of the concept?
No, I haven't.
Agriturismo I found in Sardinia, where in the mountains there was a farm we went to visit with friends, and what they had, basically, they love the concept because you can apply it anywhere. This country, I'd like to see more of it over here. So basically, a farm would produce like have a restaurant where obviously they're supplying the food in a set meal, but with traditional dances as well and traditional costumes. So you're really emphasizing and supporting local culture. And it's good for the farm, and it's people wanting to obviously do. It's very successful in Sardinia, for sure, and it's people going. Brilliant. It's an adventure to go somewhere into the countryside and experiencing something that is healthy. And I think that's something that really connects very well into the cultural aspect because it's entertaining as well.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's got some.
Is there anything else? Because we're coming to 2 hours now, so I want to wrap it up. Anything else you would like to say, Daniel, before we wrap it up?
Just briefly on the Gardens of Hope, just give you a little fact, should we say. This was actually documented in even one of the independent paper this 4 years ago, but I'm sure.
Doctor?
Pardon?
You mentioned a name?
So it was in the independent paper. I have it was cut out because it was quite striking. It was a gardener, and he was talking about our food system, and the research he had found was that there were at this time there were approximately 2,000 square meters, 500,000 hectares of household gardens in the UK, just gardens alone. If half of those gardens were used to grow fruit and vegetables, that would produce 7.5 million tons of crops per year, which is more than the 6.9 million tons of UK households eat in a year. Bruce,
how much do we eat a year?
Apparently, this was the figures that 6.9 million tons UK households eat in a year.
Yeah.
So just alone, if you obviously in the Second World War you had the Victory Gardens, Dig for Victory.
Dig for Victory, yeah.
And I think Gardens of Hope, just focusing on people's gardens, has the potential. If we could somehow convey or incentivize also people to convert their gardens into edible, productive spaces, even half of it. If these facts are, these facts reveal that, many of the food issues wouldn't be so, and we would lose that.
I absolutely agree. And I was just thinking about this a while ago and thinking, actually, we should bring that whole thing, Dig for Victory, back. Why? Because it's not that many people seem to know about it, but it's a quiet war going on with silent weapons. It's time to dig those posters out again.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Maybe it could be Gardens of Hope though, but
I think to stress the positive, absolutely, and anything that is aspirational, inspirational, and sound, I think is absolutely lovely. I think you've got a fantastic vision there, and what I love about it is you're doing it, and I'm going to go down for sure down to your neck of the woods and see literally the woods and probably the Gardens of Hope,
Yeah, yeah, you can.
doing and take some pictures. As a photographer, I'd love to do
Yeah,
that.
that would be good. Yeah,
Share your practical vision that you're doing,
yeah.
and maybe write an article in Brighter Times about it or something.
That sounds good.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Daniel.
Yeah.
You've been brilliant.
No,
And
great to share.
yeah, I'm glad that sometimes you come across people, you just have that intuition that it would be a good idea to connect with them. And I'm so glad I did, because this actually, our conversation has gone on far longer than I thought it might do. It's forward to about 10 minutes plus, but actually we've had best part of an hour, which is inspirational in itself.
Yes.
So I'm sure other people will find this interesting, and hopefully they'll share this to others to actually spread the good news about what we can do. And then if at some other point, if you want to then come back and share, do a slideshow or something like Tess did, and show with pictorial form what you're doing.
That's a good idea.
Yeah,
that's a good idea. And where will where will this be?
This will be shown on the People's Forum, but we're going to try and get this shared by other platforms as well. And I'm thinking I'm going to put it on YouTube. There shouldn't be a problem with that. I'm going to start using that YouTube platform as well. Just to help things along there. I think maybe they need a bit of help. But it's a good way of sharing. Any way which we can share, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Daniel. And I'll send a copy to you anyway to make sure.
That'd be good. And I'll be interested you mentioned about the art aspect. Maybe we can
Yeah, we'll talk about that. And I'll send you information about what I'm doing there as well.
That would be good. Yeah.
Many thanks, Daniel.
Yeah.
Have a good day.
Take care.
Ciao for now. Bye, everybody.